who do I want to become? I want to be more of a Christian man. I want to be more of a better business leader. I want to be a better friend. You are the average of the 5 people you allow influence you.
Right. Well, is the thing that's been keeping you safe is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like I said earlier, it's miserable to be comfortably stuck.
And this is 1% better every day. We talk about this, which compounds to that 37% over a year. So understanding that, I'm like, okay, what do I need to work on today? Do I need to apologize to somebody? Do I need to show up more in kind and compassion and loving? If you don't have that mentality of growth, if we're not growing, then we're dying. And so that's always been embedded in my mind. And so when I reflect back the last decade and just being along in this journey with you, if we haven't killed the old version of us, then we would be stuck in that cog in the wheel or rat race.
So you've spent 10 years building your business because the end goal, the pinnacle, employees, income, freedom, status, all those things are just waiting for you. You've worked so hard to get it, fight or flight, do or die every day to be successful. And then you get it. Now what? You spent 10 years on this moment, this focused point of success and what success means, and you've achieved it. What do you do next? Today, we're going to be talking about that because it is a bit of a crisis. Not even a bit of, it is the crisis for the person that's dealing with that. And if you're not there yet, if you're in the middle of building, heading towards that pinnacle goal that you want, it's coming for you. And if you're not prepared, it can be absolutely devastating and send you spiraling. And a lot of wrong moves can be made and actually unwind everything that you've done. So we're going to talk about that today and really dig into why that is, what to do about it, the main hurdles and the ways to step over those hurdles so that you can find fulfillment and peace. And again, if you're not there yet, that this will be, you're lucky to hear it now. If you're in this boat currently, this is what you do next. This is what you do immediately next. So, Sean, I know you can speak to this better than anyone. It's why we're talking on this podcast today. It's why we have a mastermind. It's why we have all these things. Hit us up.
Yeah, man. So everything that you just said is spot on in going through this journey of building Level Up and Live and everything that we've done. And then also going back to my first business, which was, for our new listeners, I own a independent insurance agency here locally in Conroe, Texas. And so for the last 10 years, I have been on this transformational journey. And so one of my passions of when I speak on a podcast or on social media or to some business owner in person is to help avoid the failures that I have went through. And that's not always easy. And you know that. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm talking to somebody listening to this, my old version of myself and killing that old version of myself, and we just recently did a podcast on that, got to check it out. Highly recommend on killing the old version of yourself because that speaks high volume to me. And I resonate so much with that.
Yeah.
Is I didn't understand what freedom looked like for me. I was trapped in kind of like what we had talked about before the podcast we had shot today is I was head in the sand, in the trenches, just day after day doing the things that I needed to do to get to where I wanted to go, whether that was paying the bills, hiring employees, advertising, marketing. We only have so much energy as high achievers and business owners and entrepreneurs to do the things that we need to go. And what I have learned over time is it's all about conserving that energy and aligning it with what does freedom look like to you. So
what did it look like to you before you realized what it really was? Like when you're in the middle of building, like you had freedom at the back of your mind, oh, this will lead to freedom. So what did that look like compared to what you ended up finding out what it really was?
Yeah. So I didn't really have a clear picture on freedom. I just knew, I knew externally. See, this is where there's an internal, we have internal, which is looking inward, and then we have external. And so for me, it was all external. It's like, I've got to make this phone call because it's going to lead to the sale. I've got to hire this employee because it's going to lead of replacing myself. And so, and externally, when I hear you ask about freedom, it was, this is what I need to do to get to that next milestone or that next achievement. because
Yeah.
that was an external factor. It was all the accolades, right? It was like, I needed to get to this 50,000, this 100,000, this 250,000, this $500,000, this million. So I needed to get to these milestones, and which is all external. And sure, it'll get you to where you want to go. But what I had soon realized was that that entire 5, 6, 7 years of starting the business, I never looked inward and asked myself, what is true freedom? Because freedom to me now is peace. Well,
Yeah.
if I'm always worried about externally, Ewan, of what's going on in the outer world, of making everybody else happy, of pleasing everybody else, of the accolades, of the houses, of the cars, and everything else that's going on around me versus inward, that I had no freedom at all.
Yeah.
So for me, early days, it was, I want the asset, which is the business, to pay for my lifestyle. Well, that's an external force, you see. And so when I learned that 5 years in, I'm going, why am I miserable? Why am I unfulfilled? Why am I not living a purpose-driven life? It's because I wasn't aligned with my values, and I wasn't aligned with freedom. Sure, I had the accolades and I had the cash flow to pay for my lifestyle, but
Yeah,
I never.
freedom to do what, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you're at that freedom. Well, freedom to, to travel,
Yeah,
freedom to do what I want when I want. But that's not, like you said, that's external freedom.
100%.
And so, yeah, technically you would have that, and everyone thinks, well, that's it. You would feel great on the inside.
Mm-mm.
What I'm hearing you say is that's, you could have total freedom out here and yet be totally bound up inside, because
Yes.
the definition of freedom is a feeling, right? Like
Yes.
at the end of the day, like if it's, do you feel free
Yes.
versus doing free?
Yes. That's so beautifully said. And that's a struggle. That's a huge struggle. And so leading into another struggle that is a transition into that question of freedom, to me, is there was a disconnect between everything else that was going on in my life. I was disconnected from my inner world, from my spiritual world. And so when I realized that, well, what does that mean, Sean? For me, it was, I was disconnected from what was really going on in my marriage, in my relationships, in my health,
You've said it multiple times. Me and you, like, we've always been super tight, except for a period that I often don't think about, because I'm like, I come and go. Anytime I'd see you, we'd just be immediately connected. But when I think back, there was a period where we did not hang out or see each other much, because and I didn't know what was going on like, honestly, how would I know? Because we weren't actually connecting. And so your head was down, and I didn't realize that, so that it didn't strain our relationship at all, but there was, just that time distance, but not like, it wasn't strained, but yeah, we didn't see each other. And now that I play it back and think about everything that you've said, that was, well, yeah, if you had done that to everyone, like people who, like wife or mom, dad, or people who are family, that would strain it, because you don't see them. Like, that makes a difference. Different with friends, it can be similar, but not the same as those deep relationship, like wife,
There was always an agenda. That was another struggle that I had struggled with, and they all correlate together, which is that next thing, that next high, that next dopamine hit, that next business. And so
would you say that right there, that next, is it a form of avoidance? Are you avoiding something potentially, or is it, well, I need to keep this high going because I love the feeling of this, because I don't know what to do if I didn't?
For me, like it's a fear internally. It's a fear. So one of the things that I've learned, and this has just been in the last 3 years of my personality type, is it comes down to what's driving our core, our desires and our fear.
Yeah, that's right.
And so for me, it was because, my story, I've been terminated multiple times from Enterprise Rent-A-Car, from State Farm. So I was at a point in my life where, I was living paycheck to paycheck and having to rely on my wife. And so I never wanted to end up in that position again, where somebody was controlling my own destiny. So that was it was a fear of me just consistently driving. I'm like, okay, sure, this insurance business is running itself. It's got its cash flow. Now I need to jump to this other business and build a landscape company. Why? Because I know how, right? And I was focused on the external forces. I needed multiple streams of income. See, that's all external forces. And so where focus goes, energy flows, because I was so focused and avoiding what I really needed to do. What I was avoiding was looking inward. What is really driving these actions, Ewan?
Yeah.
Right. And so what I soon realized is like, oh, it's the ego and pride that's in the driver's seat. And now by looking inward, I can ask myself the questions on what's really driving these action steps. And learning by going through these struggles that I took a step back and go, holy smokes. And that's when I reached out and said, you know what? I'm going to make a transition. I'm going to make a pivot. I'm going to call up Ewan Heinemeier. And this was over 3 years ago. And I'm going to start a mastermind group. Why am I going to start a mastermind group? I'm not going to make the same mistake that I've been making these last 6 years. I'm going to start serving and impacting somebody else that may be going through what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so that's when the mastermind group, the Level Up and Live mastermind group, was born.
There's a huge element of freedom within what you just said, right? When you start helping other people, you think, oh, the business, and I get the freedom from I get the cars and the houses and the time freedom. And you think, oh, that's the pinnacle. And then, and this is what we've learned here recently, multiple guys, the high level guys, big businesses, they realize that they have also said the same thing, not real freedom, but then the purpose, the impact on others, when you're able to share that to help other people not do that, you just found freedom. And what was it? Helping other people feel fulfilled, to avoid the mistakes. And freedom is that, serving others, right? As opposed to the superficial, physical side of it, materialism, which again, nothing wrong with any of those things. Now you get to enjoy all those things because your purpose is serving and helping others with impact. And, I'm curious, like if you had that at the beginning, or any business owner had that at the beginning, would they have been able to succeed as much as they had with a drive and grind? Or would they even succeed even more with peace and bliss because they're coming from a place of purpose and impact? It's hard to maybe gauge. It'd be different for every person. Because you're a very powerful person when you're in impact mode and feeling free before you have time freedom and all the possessions. You could be that person today. You don't have to have all those things, right? So, how could someone listening to this today that's not, let's say, quotation marks, made it, but they start shifting that mindset to impact, helping others, serving. Well, that goes directly into what they're building right now. Would that have made a difference for you?
Would have made all the difference in the world, man. I would have made all the difference in the world. And I think I would have went through a lot less pain and discomfort and sleepless nights and heartaches and headaches. But I did it to myself. I'm the one to blame. I accept full responsibility for everything that's happened in my life. And I'm super grateful. And that's another thing too. Anybody that, I don't care where you are, you're just starting out. Maybe you start applying some of these things in your life and filtering them. I know we have a lot of business owners and high achievers sending us text messages, sending us DMs, how it's making a difference in their business and their lives and them applying it in their own journey. And so that's what we're trying to help and impact and serve in the grand scheme of things. But yes, if I'm listening to my old version of myself or the version of myself now, I spend all my time thinking, okay, well, how can I avoid the same trials and tribulations and the mistakes that I went through myself? I mean, you've talked about this behind the scenes. I don't know if that's possible. I think we all have to go through some kind of pain and discomfort where you reach out for help. And, so we've seen this. You can't do it alone.
Because if you were 30,000 feet, that's a blind spot. And everybody has one, right? Like you don't know you're currently doing it. And so had you had someone that you were working with, like coach at the time, like, well, you see what's going on here? You'd be like, I did not see that because it's a blind spot, until you figured out on your own, thank goodness most people don't, where you knew something was off. So you had someone to come, your coach ended up kind of inspiring you to be a coach, but I think that blind spot not doing it alone is huge.
I was listening to another podcast and they talked about, I believe it's Microsoft, how they have certain times of the year where I believe it's the entire company or their team or their departments, they have what's called a thanking session. I thought that was super interesting. I resonated with that. And so what that means is on thanking sessions it's just basically slowing down to ask yourself the questions. Is the GPS headed in the right direction for my personal life and my professional life? Yeah. And so once we start asking the questions, it allows us to, because a lot of times we'll come off course, and that was me for 8 years. Well, think if I would have had that or listened to that to that advice by asking myself the questions, what does freedom look like to you? What did it feel like and look like, Sean, if you relinquished control, 100% control, and trusted in your faith and trusted in God and trusted in a higher power? And if I would have had that 8 years ago, right, I could have started working on that versus where I am today. And so
it's so hard to trust. It's so hard to let go of control. And I believe that's the key to faith. You're like, well, how do you do faith? It's not something I think you go out seeking to do, like activities. Faith is the moment you let go of control, because it's so scary. And we hold on for dear life. Like that's squeezing to control, because we want that security, that safety. So what would faith require? Well, it would have to require you to let go and trust that someone's got your back, So in your business, like, or someone that's doing it currently in it now, that's squeezing in control, how do they get that trust? Like, what's some steps where they can not get burned, because obviously the fear is real and things could happen. Maybe their guard is up and it would protect them from certain things because that's a skill set. But yeah, how would you coach someone to have some more trust that would help them actually dominate, like as an edge? You're letting go of control, and trusting is actually an edge to dominate. If they could shift that mindset, like how would you help them?
From my experience, and this is just my opinion and experience, is trust is really, especially with like, if it's a business partner, I think there's rules of engagement. So if there's a business partner, or if it's a team member, or if it's my spouse, I'm looking to marry somebody, depending on the situation, right? And so for me to trust those individuals that are on my team, or I'm going to be spending the rest of my life with this individual, a few things that come to mind is values. Right? What are your values? Do we have similar values? Do we have similar beliefs? Do we have similar interests where we can align with some of the things that how we live our lives? And so in mission and vision, do we see a North Star? Is there a spiritual journey? Is one in a healthy version, or is one in an unhealthy version? And so to answer your question, as far as trust, I look at all these things. These are all little indicators, all little radars of really knowing oneself. That's the first step. And then knowing the people that you're bringing into your life, that you're allowing in your inner circle, that you're allowing in your center of influence, and to join your team. Because when you have that, Ewan, 60% done is 100% awesome. And what I mean by that is they're never going to do it like Sean. They're never going to write the email like Sean. They're never going to say what's on the podcast is Sean. They're never going to do, what Sean is good at. What they're going to do good at, and my job is to find the right people for the right seats. What are they good at? What is Ewan good at? What are the team members good at? And then allowing them to release control and then go do what they need to do to shine in their environment, right? And so, and I think, and I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that over time because I was the micromanager. I like to control every little situation and every scenario. This still pops up to this day. But as you know, my personality type, that is what I'll always struggle with. I'll always struggle to fight control, right? When things get tough, when I find like, one of my biggest things is for me. And again, this is going back to your question, what would be one step? Well, you have to find out, when you're hiring people, when you're bringing people, when you're trusting people, is what makes you tick? Like what drives your inner core? And that comes down to values and knowing your personality type. But for me, betrayal is a huge one for me. Like loyalty is my number one strength. I always say I'll go to war, I'll go to battle with you if you are in my inner circle, right? Or if you're in my community. But betrayal is a fear of mine. It's something that I'll always struggle with. And what I've learned in the last couple of years in building the business and building Level Up and Live is that God is going to love me. He is there for me.
Always.
Right. And so I can't stress, I can't worry if somebody's going to betray me or not.
People will always betray you. They will always falter in this world because no one's perfect. That's why we need God.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's so beautiful. I resonate so much with that because I'm like, man, what's the alternative that Ewan? Somebody that's trying to control everything, right? You may not even have to be a type, a strong personality like me. Maybe you're just trying to control, how your lawn was done or how your laundry is being done or who's making dinner or
And that's
Oh,
exhausting,
super
because think about because you're trying to do the impossible, which is I'm going to try and control, I'm going to try and stop being
yep.
betrayed, because betrayal could be a small thing. You didn't do the
Mhm.
yard right. Well, that's a form of betrayal. You said you would
Yes.
do this, and I expected this, and you didn't. Super small, but it goes all the way up to the maximum of
Yes.
betrayal, whatever you could imagine that being. And so it's impossible to control the guy doing the
Yeah.
yard right. Like, so how even more is it impossible that for all the other things? And if you're doing that all the time, sheer
Yes.
exhaustion, right? And so what's the alternative?
Yes.
Trust, right? Where, so here's the competitive edge, or the dominating edge, which to me should be very attractive. If you're hearing this and you're like, well, I can't let go of control, I want my art to be done right. Well, hold on a sec. Here's what you're going to get back: all the energy, all this power that you'll be able to channel into actually doing things you really care about, right? And impacting other people's lives. Because the art's important. But what is more important than that? Your journey, right? Like your destination, and having the life that you want, right? So you can let go of that. Yes, like you said, 60% done's
Awesome.
100% awesome. Yeah, the yard's done. You
Yeah.
didn't have to do it, right? It's a little bit off. You trust. I'll have a nice conversation with them. Like, hey, would you mind doing this next time? You know what? I trust the guy to handle that, and you build that. And then you save all that energy. And again, yes, go back to, if you really want true and ultimate trust, that's just waiting for you with God.
How do you, with building Level Up and Live in the last year to 2 years, has there ever been a time where you tried to control scenario? And then how did you overcome that in that moment? Because we both know it's always in those moments where we're like, oh, we're doing this. We're trying to control the outcome here. Was
Yeah.
there a moment that you can think
Yeah.
about in building Level Up and Live? And then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, man, this is gonna be an interesting one. I try and control people's
Mm,
emotions,
mm,
responses, so that they're always feeling like the way they should need to feel to continue to want to be there. And that was probably a skill set that I developed in childhood to survive. And so it's a
yes.
survival technique, and which can be a superpower when channeled the right direction, but it can also be very toxic, because of, again, like you're talking about trust, like you can't control how the yard is done. You can't control what people are going to do to you. I ultimately can't control people's emotions. And so, man, one thing I've been learning here I'm 43, last few months is, man, I'm not responsible for people's emotions. And it's been unbelievably liberating. Talk about freedom. I'm like, they're going to respond. How are they going to respond? And I don't have to actually deal with it. That might sound foreign to people. To me, that is my entire life. Like, I've been in medical sales, made millions of dollars doing that. And every single transaction for the last 12 years, I've been in sales since I was 16. So, 25 plus years of sales. I can read people, inflections, I can sense their energy, and I will match it immediately. And once we're matched, we're synchronized. And then once we're synchronized, I can lead them I can make them happy. I can make them sad. I could do something with their emotions. But I'd always have to control it. It was exhausting. And then, there's an element of, well, how authentic is that? I'd always be me, but at the same time, man, I'm still trying to control an outcome, as opposed to just letting go and letting it happen, and then learning from the response. Because I was trying to protect myself from a negative
Mm,
outcome, which is not get the sale, right? Not get the outcome, for Level Up and Live. Like, I want this and these people to do X, or stay and build and grow. So I'm going to try and handle all the people, all
mm,
the emotions, all at the
yes.
same time. Oof, that's exhausting, as opposed to just trust that what we have is special. Do what I do best. And I've always trusted you. It's super funny. When it comes to people, I trust people. If they burn me, I don't know if it's my Enneagram 3, I go into logic mode and I can just turn that off. And I'm like, I'll just deal with that later. It's probably not healthy. But I expect to be betrayed, and I know God has always got my back. So I do feel comfortable
Mm,
there. But yeah, for me, it's more like outcomes. Yeah, I'm an achiever. I want this outcome. I have to perform. And so I'm going to control what I can to make sure that happens. I never talked
no.
about this before. I never even thought about it. This is coming out for the first time ever in my life that I've
And
realized this.
I receive everything that you're saying. So when that happens, when you get that feeling, when you get that emotion that pops up and you're trying to control those emotions, what do you do in those moments? What do you do in those moments?
Well, first off, it's petrifying. Like, because if I have to step back and be like, I'm just going to let them be how they're going to be, I'm like, well, I don't know what's going to happen then. Is there going to be an awkward silence? I hate awkward silences because, and a lot of the times I learned awkward silence gives time people to think. It gives them time to think. And if I don't give them time to think, then they're constantly going to be going with me. Right. And again, I'm saying this out loud because I can be vulnerable and
Oh
tell
my
people
gosh.
now, like that's
By the way,
actively
this is
what I'm
something
not
I've
doing.
known this man for 15 plus years, and what he's sharing right now is pure gold. And everything that he does, keep going.
Yeah. So now I literally tell myself a voice in my head, like, you're not responsible for their emotions or the outcome. And it's like, whoa, it's super scary, but I'm getting more used to it. And it feels fantastic. It feels really freeing. Like, whatever happens, happens, man. You know, which I'm not like that. I'm like, I don't seem like a control freak, but because it's a different form of control. I'm not trying to control anybody because I want them to be my like subservient slave or anything. It's not about that at all. It's about me protecting myself from being hurt or looking not valuable.
Interesting, man. So somebody listening to this and they feel trapped in their own success and the things that we have touched on today, and what would be like one thing that they could do to really redefine their freedom and what that looks like to them? And, you sharing your story, obviously the things that you're working on, the things that I'm working on. But if they feel like, hey man, I get it. Like, this is what I'm going through. I feel trapped in my own success, cog in the wheel, rat race. How can they redefine that freedom? What's one thing that they can do?
Man, so before I say it, before people check out, you do this now and you hated it at one point. Cody, our friend Cody, who's been on the show, he's been talking about it. I've been talking about it, writing it down. Right. And like I said, before you check out, like, because people say, well, I'm not a writer. I don't write. Well, you have a hand, you have a mind, and you have a pen, and you can actually do it. It's just, you're not used to doing it. But what's fascinating is when you write, it becomes a form of reality, and it helps you process thought right into reality. If it stays in your head, it's very hard to figure out what freedom is in your head. It's a feeling, of course, right? And you can definitely embody the feeling of what that is, the vision in your mind. But if you really want to dial in, well, what is freedom? Ask yourself questions, like continue. Like, well, why does that make me feel free? And what would that do for me? And a lot of the times when you do that initially, you'll get stumped. You'll get stopped because you're like, well, I hadn't thought past that. I only thought about that end goal, like we're talking about with the business after 10 years. Like, if you don't think past that, you don't know what to do. You literally have not made the connections in your head. So writing it out, what does that look like, and bring true peace and freedom? So yeah, I would definitely say write it down. It's not a sexy answer, but it is one of the keys. And like we always talk about, the first thing to do ever, especially in coaching, get clear. And that's what that is, getting clear on what freedom is. And yeah, what would you say, something that would be another action step for someone to take?
Yeah, man, the first thing that I went through, you executed it perfectly. And I think this runs congruent with using free resources. And so what I mean by that is, even if it's a worksheet. So when I hear you say that, and I'm thinking about somebody listening to that, journal, writing it down, that's great and that's wonderful. Aligning that with redefining freedom and what that looks like to you, but using a simple resource. And we've got these in the show notes, and you can go to our website, levelupandlive.com, free resources, multiple of them, whether it's core values, weekly planner, you name it, we've got it in there. And so what these do for you, these free resources, it slows you down, asks you questions, and then it gives you a guidance on what to follow and what to ask yourself. And so that's where it all shifted for me in my transformational journey, is when I received documents. See, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to write down in a journal. And there's YouTube videos, there's all kind of stuff out there. But when I received the resource, when I received a document that was just basically handed to me on a platter, and that's what we've created, right? At Level Up and Live on these resources, then I can go through each one of these and ask myself the questions. And so that's what allowed me to really deepen the skill set, and then also the muscle of what is working and what is not working. So you can simply start with, what does freedom look like to you? After listening to this podcast, I would encourage anybody listening to this to go back and listen to it again, and just check out our free resources in the show notes, check out our website, and start there, and leverage some of these little bitty tips and advice and guidance that we've provided today, and apply them in your own life, because you have the power within. You just have to believe it to achieve it and see it through. So you got any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, maybe one last thought here. Just, one actionable step that would take you away from just thinking what freedom would be versus what real freedom is. And we hinted to earlier. If you could just figure out what is your power. Like you've talked about your power today. If someone was listening back, they would definitely hear what your power is, and they would have heard what mine was too. It's different for everybody. If you identify that, figure out how you could use that for impact, right? Because we're talking about impact serving others. That's true freedom. When you have that element in your life, it will open up doors in your mind to where you want to go, because that's what really matters. Yeah, apply because you might be confused on, well, what do I do? How do I do it? How do I get this real freedom? Indicator is, what are you really good at? And use that to make impact in somebody else's life.
And just to wrap things up, one thing I would add to that is we are best. So if people are like, I don't know where to start, you can ask these questions. I get it. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my vision is, my North Star. One thing that's always really helped me is start here. We are best equipped to help the people we once were.
Yeah.
And I'll leave you with that today. So start 100%. There, right? Think about the things that you've been through, the trials and the tribulations and the adversities and the setbacks and who you've become in this journey. We are best equipped to help the people we once were, and start there. And like Ewan said, once you start serving and impacting, man, that's where the fulfillment and the purpose, and that's where you start creating that momentum and that confidence. And you just stack on top of that. You just create that momentum. And it becomes addicting. Yeah. So we appreciate your time, energy, and effort today. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. We're very grateful for all of our listeners. And outside of that, share your story. We love to be tagged on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it, YouTube. Drop it in the comments if you've got a story that you want to share. If there's future topics, business owners, high achievers, entrepreneurs that are struggling with, that you would like us to touch on, then let us know. Shoot us a DM. Make sure you share this with another like-minded individual that wants to level up and live their best life. Outside of that, level up and live.
Level up and live.